Your heart's not broken. Love breaks you open. Love sets you free. And when you're open, love lets you feel eternity. Come fly with me. Let love break you open. One life, one love, one heart.
With all that's happened in the last couple of weeks with shootings and knifings and tragedy and revolution and chaos happening in so many places, not just here in the United States, but around the globe, today's message has particular import for metaphysicians and for centers for spiritual living in general, and in specific, I believe. So with the theme this month of connection, and to continue the idea of what Kurt shared last week with his blankie here on the platform, and those fringy things on the edge, like everybody in here is one of those fringes, and a conversation that is almost more like a heated discussion I had with a couple of peers a couple of weeks ago, with some of the conversations that have gone on between the ministers on the ministers' listserv, and with a lot of history, it seems so appropriate that this theme of connection gets dealt with in more precision every single Sunday of this month. Because it's difficult sometimes to deal with conflict and chaos and travesty. We need to figure out how to do that in the moment. Some of you may know that this last week, August 6th and the 9th, was the 74th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Two very, very explosive events for the whole world, and the introduction in a more blatant way to the atomic reality. So when we look at connection, events like that, events like 9/11, events like these last couple of weeks and the last 10 years of mass shootings, I think it's more important we bring our work to the streets, and we only can do that with our own personal work. Everyone already lives in the infinite as part of the divine. That means we have access to the power, the presence, the intelligence, all the time, every when, everywhere, no exception. And therefore, we live in continual connection with it and all of life, meaning there ain't nobody else out there. That's us doing that stuff. It's up to us to change our individual consciousness so the collective consciousness shifts more and more. Now, I've had conversations in the past with people about, do you believe that there is more compassionate being exhibited on the planet today than it was 200 years ago? And it doesn't take long to conclude, yeah, I think there is. Now, we have a whole lot more stories of that which is not what we would consider compassionate, but at the same time, the reason that comes to the foreground is for us to use for our individual awakening. Gray's first law is use it all. Use everything for my awakening, for my good, for my advancement, for my constructive evolution. That's why I hold that as my first principle, my first law. To the degree that I have not denied any experience I've had in my life as anything other than a creation of my consciousness in my experience, is the degree that I feel more empowered in dealing with anything that comes along in my life. So today, soaking in the one, let the feeling of connection soak in like the Navajo female rain. So last week, Kurt astutely characterized what does connection feel like. Heck if I know. Because when we're in connection, it's so natural, it's automatic, it's neutral. It doesn't have the flamboyance of exaggeration. It doesn't have the trauma of pain. When we find that place where we are neutral and engaged, we will find huge power and intelligence and creativity available to us. Because we're not subsumed with the negative emotion and suffering. We're not exalted to be outside of this very moment with some sense of ecstasy. So it happens in both extremes. Ernest Holmes. There is one spirit incarnated in everyone, an immortal presence forever expanding everything, causing everything to grow. While we may think otherwise, behind all this vast array of life, there can be but one cause, one universal mind, one infinite spirit flowing into, through, and becoming everything. Whether it's a note on the piano, an individual voice, or harmonious collection of sounds, through everything. Joseph Newton said, people are lonely because they build walls instead of bridges. I like that a lot. So, let's talk about August 6th and 9th, 1945 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's a good friend of mine, a minister, who lives out in Northern California. And she reflected and told a story years ago about she used to host Japanese students and teach them here in the United States. I participated in the same experience when I was at the center in Santa Rosa, California, and we brought in 30 Japanese girls and put them out and placed them in homes with Americans as an immersion for 1 full month in English and our culture. Well, Gloria did a little bit more than that. She not only did several of those groups, but she also went to Japan, and she visited several of those girls and their families there. And this one particular girl, Yoshiko, who she visited, she met her mom and her grandmother. Her grandmother was very infirm at the time, still suffering from the effects of the radiation. And Yoshiko's parents were so welcoming and gracious to Gloria. She was really taken aback and humbled by it. After sharing in the tea ceremony, she happened to notice their altar where there were all the pictures of Yoshiko's ancestors. And she asked about that. Now, in Japan, ancestor worship is one of the primary forms of religion and one of the ancient religions practiced there. And they have these pictures up, and the conversation moved from that to Yoshiko's experience of being in America as an exchange student. And the mother said, the reason, well, really one of the reasons I sent Yoshiko on this experience to the United States to be with an American family, because we believe that when you get to know us, you will love us. And not to know us is what caused Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If you love us, we believe that that will never happen again. I like that imagery. And it really touched me when I read Gloria's note about it, and we talked about it later one-on-one. She was awed by it. That this is a lifestyle for this particular family and for many of the people from that same generation in Japan. Step forward over 50 years. September 11th, 2001 in New York City. I'm checking emails that morning, and I get a phone call from one of our board members who said, "Do you know what's going on in New York City?" And I said, "No." He said, "Turn on the TV." "Which channel?" "It doesn't matter. Click." And he never hung up on anybody. So it got my attention. So I went into the living room, turned on the TV, and as I'm walking back around the couch, I turned and looked, and I watched the plane, the second plane, fly into the second tower. And this thought came up for me, which I knew was powerful. How, I have no idea. The thought came up and said, wow, I can hardly wait to see the collateral good that comes out of this apparent travesty. And I stood there, leaking, feeling the reality of that statement. And sure enough, over the next couple of days, as the reporters were on the street talking to people saying, "How does this feel? How do you feel? What do you think I feel? What do you think how this feels? I'm going to go help somebody." There was in the experience in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was in the experience of New York City, and there still is this reaction to that kind of behavior, including in Dayton, El Paso, and so forth and so on, before and after all of these things. The sense of gathering of the survivors, the sense of gathering of the communities, saying, how can we not do this anymore? People, that's an inside job. You can't blame it on some politician. You can't put it out there. You can't blame it on mental illness. You can't blame it on no gun control. You can't blame it on anything out there. This is a collective consciousness that we need to get our heads around. That we need to develop practices that help us understand that connection is the reality. And there's an intrinsic problem with the word connection from the get-go. It means to bind together, which implies, simply in the definition, there has to be two or more. There's already duality. Connection is about dissolving duality into oneness. It's about binding together, coming together, recognizing there's a whole lot more similarity than difference for all of us, with all of us, and everyone else. Diversity of consciousness is great. I don't do it because I think our oneness is way more important. It's too easy to look at differences. It's too easy to argue that this is more right or this is more right. Nonsense. It's what's true about you. But how can we recognize in each other the same needs, the same desires, the same preferences to live and love and self-express? In the Upanishads, the Hindu philosophy, those wise ones who see that the consciousness within themselves is the same consciousness within all conscious beings, attain eternal peace. We all share the same consciousness. We live in choice about what we do with that. And we, individually and collectively, just as this center, can make a difference right here inside this building, outside there on those streets, by demonstrating I love you, you love me, and the more we know each other, that love can never be denied. We lose connection through resistance to anyone or anything. We all know, when thought about, ignorance is the primary source of fear. When we understand there's no fear, and mastery can come from that. We lose connection through superficiality, focusing on the surface instead of getting into the depth of the experience. We lose connection through control, trying to control another person, another situation, a relationship, anything outside of us. And we lose connection through selfishness, remaining self-centered in a psychological way. Ernest Holmes said, "We say there is one life, and that life is God. But the statement is not complete until we add, that life is my life now." And when each of us say that, that life is my life now, and we say it in unison, all of a sudden there is this collective realization of that one life living through each and every single person in this room. Every single fringy person is part of that tapestry. Eric Butterworth is how I want to close. God is in you as the ocean is in the wave. You are in me as the ocean is in the wave. I am in you as the ocean is in the wave. Let's move into an awareness of that. And then let's move out into the world from that point of view. Bless you. Let's pray together. I let my awareness of the one life, that one life expression and the source of it, build in my mind. And as I think on that one life, I see the similarities in the butterfly, the elephant, the freight train, the person sitting next to me. That one life expresses itself in myriad ways. That just expresses more God. So in this awareness, I recognize the importance of this particular single life expression called by my name. That particular single life expression called by the individual's name. And I know, I honor, and I respect it as the God life. So any claiming this morning moves into the experience of the claimant. Easily, effortlessly, because that's what life does. It gives us our desire. So as these individual prayers continue, I speak my word for this beloved community and all of the people here, knowing that that full power, that full intelligence of divinity itself, of the infinite, moves through every thought, word, and deed, transmuting itself into the highest and best through every action, transmuting itself into the highest and best through every spoken word or shared experience. I know only the best for everyone, and I know it as only good. So I feel the joy building within, the smile forming on my face, letting me know that these words have already taken flight into the world of form. So I let these words go. I step back into the flow and let it be. So since it's already done, together we affirm this by saying, and so it is.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed.